Welcome to Legally Speaking with Rest the Case, where we break down complex legal topics into stories and insights you can use. Today, we're diving into something that affects everyone's property rights in India. Who really owns a property? How does inheritance law work for daughters versus sons? And what legal pitfalls should you watch out for before buying or selling or inheriting property? To help us unravel these questions, we have Advocate Deepika, an expert in property law, sharing their expertise and insights. Whether you're a first time buyer, investor, or just curious about your rights, this episode will give you clarity, practical tips, and a few surprising truths about property ownership in India. So, to begin with, Advocate Deepika, can you walk us through property rights in India? What do we actually mean? Does it mean ownership, possession, or control?
So in our provisions in India, we have bundle of rights relating to property. It includes ownership, it includes possession. Ownership is a higher or a superior right where you have legal document executed or registered in your favor. Possession, a person who is having possession may not be the owner of the property, but person who is the owner can have a possession of the property. To simplify, I'll give you one example. Landlord and tenant. Here, landlord has a ownership right and tenant is in possession of the property, but he doesn't have any ownership right. Ownership is the one where you have a right, title, interest in that particular property in your name. You can sell the property, you can transfer the property, you can give the property. So registered document, or you have acquired the right through proper legal channel, or if it is inherited, proper under if it is Hindu, then Hindu Succession Act, proper legal, you have acquired the title through legal channels. So you are owner of the property. Even if you are owner of the property, you may not be in possession of property. Sometimes we rent out our property, but possession is something where you may not be owner, but you are enjoying the property. You don't have right to sell the property.
Right. And when we talk about property rights, why is it so important to understand your property rights, especially with rising disputes and real estate fraud?
Yes. So it's because lack of awareness leads to litigations. In India, majority of the litigation is because you don't know what right you are acquiring in the property. It's like as I mentioned in the beginning, that everybody wants the property right. It's simple, but when you comes to know there is a property, until it's like, there will be new relatives, new documents will turn out to claim ownership. So even if you are buying property, you must verify the title of the property. You should be aware of your right. You should do due diligence. If it is under constructed property, then check on RERA certificate, check on RERA side, check on mutation record of the government side. So awareness is important. I mean, even in family there are siblings who, everybody wants to claim the property right. If they are in possession, they will say, I am the owner of property. Somebody will say that they will forge the document and says, I have a document executed in my favor. So one must know in fact, in India, there's a say that everybody should know the law of the land. And especially for the property, you should be aware of your rights. That will avoid litigation or a fraud, you know.
Right. And what is the difference between ancestral property and self-acquired property? And why, there's usually a confusion. Why do people usually get confused between these two properties?
So it's complicated when it comes to ancestral property. Ancestral property is generally governed by Hindu Succession Act in case of Hindus. So it's property which is inherited through generations. It's like up to 4 generations. It's there in the family, like it's like father, grandfather, great grandfather. So in ancestral property, everybody in the family, and even due to that amendment of 2005, even daughter has equal right like a son in ancestral property. Everybody has a right to claim the property in the family if the property is ancestral, which is coming from the generation to generation. It's not self-acquired property. Here in self-acquired property, it's like person who is buying the property or who has inherited the property or who acquires title in the property, who has purchased through his own means. It's not coming from the generation. So there's a difference between self-acquired property and ancestral property. Ancestral property, everybody in the family has a right to that particular property. Self-acquired is my own property. I can transfer it to somebody else. I can gift it to somebody else. I can bequeath under my will to somebody else. So this is main difference. But when it comes through like property of father, question arises whether it's ancestral property or a self-acquired property. So one has to do due diligence whether it's coming from the generation or father has purchased the property through his own means.
Right. And when we then look at ownership, can someone lose ownership of a property if they have not been living in the property or on the property for many years?
So losing ownership does not lose your title to the property. Losing possession does not lose the title of the property. I may have 3, 4 flats in my name and I give on rent or a live-in license. So I am not in possession of the property, but still I am the owner of the property. When you lose your ownership, when without your knowledge, without your consent, somebody is occupying property for years under limitation act, it's like 12 years continuous possession by someone else without owner's permission, uninterrupted open possession by someone else for 12 years, they can claim adverse possession. Then they can claim ownership because of that 12-year uninterpreted possession without, it's like hostile to the owner's right, without owner's consent, without anybody's knowledge. So that is adverse possession. Otherwise, owner may not be in the possession of the, or not required to be in possession of the property, but with my consent I can give it to somebody else to occupy or use the premises.
Right. And you recently mentioned of how in the 2005 amendment now even daughters have an equal right to ancestral property. So how far do you think have we really come in ensuring equal property rights for women in India?
So as I mentioned, 2005 amendment is a milestone. Earlier there was confusion or in fact there's no clarity whether daughter is entitled to uh, any right in the father's property. But now 2005 amendments makes very clear that daughter by birth becomes a co-partner in the family and she has equal right as of son in the family property. Now there was a question whether it is prospective effect or a retrospective effect. So there is a Supreme Court judgment of 25 which made it very clear that it has a retrospective effect. Even that father is not alive during 2005, daughter has equal right in that property as a co-partner of the property. So now that gender gap has reduced and now daughter can also claim the property of in ancestral property.
Yeah. And then when we talk about women who are married, do they have automatic right in their husband's property? Do you think there is a difference between what the law actually says and what people believe in this case?
It's a good question. You know, there is a misconception in the society that once I marry, I become owner of the property of my whatever my father husband owes. I am equal owner of the property. That is not the case under legal scenario. Wife may have her own property which she may have purchased before her marriage or after her marriage from her earning. That's her own property. That
Yeah.
doesn't get converted to father's property, husband's property. Similarly, husband's property does not become wife's property once they get married. Wife may have right to maintenance under different provision of the law, like CRPC. They have right to maintenance. If husband dies, the wife has a as a class one heir. She can claim inheritance.
Yeah.
But during lifetime of husband, she doesn't become automatic. After once they get married, she doesn't become automatic joint owner or owner of the property which her husband is owning. That is very clear legally, but she resides with him, so there's a, you know, psychologically they think
Yes.
that it's my property, but it's
Correct.
not true.
Right. And then when we talk about property disputes, what are the most common property disputes you see in your legal practice, and how can people avoid them?
Main is because of inheritance.
Mhm.
So you don't make will, and then there are legal heirs, your son, daughters, siblings. Is a dispute among siblings. Everybody wants that property,
Yeah.
and there's no proper documentation in place. So to avoid that, I would always advise make a proper will even during your lifetime, even if you are 40-year-old or you're 50-year-old. That gives clarity that who property will go to whom. During lifetime, of course, he can gift the property to who, even not even to her or his legal heirs. He can gift to outsider also, but it's always advisable to prepare a will.
Right.
So one is that scenario where siblings fight for the property of their parents. Second is there are sometimes it happens that people before buying they don't do due diligence, and there are cases where there are multiple transactions in respect of the same property. So it's always do advisable to do due diligence, verify the titles, go through the records, check online sites of government where mutation records are available, check RERA registration, RERA site, see if there are will or a probate. If there is a will, there is a procedure under Succession Act that you have to obtain probate, whether that probate is obtained, because you buy property from one of the legal heir of that particular person, and then after certain years another person will come that I am the legal heir of that particular person. So it's always better to ask for probate or a letter of administration when person dies with will, then it's probate. If it is without will, then it's a letter of administration.
Right. Right. And what is your thought on gift deeds and power of attorney? Are they useful or risky when transferring property?
Gift is in fact safest way to give away your property to your near and dear ones, because there are three brackets. If you are immediate relatives, then you don't have to pay much stamp duty. It's 500 rupees stamp duty, so you save on that stamp duty. Secondly, during your lifetime only you are segregating or making family arrangement by gifting that particular property to
Yeah.
someone, so there won't be any dispute after your death. That is for sure. It is registered documents where I am willingly giving it to my whomsoever, my son or daughter, and they are accepting it, and it will get registered and attested by two witnesses. Attestation is also compulsory in gift, as in case of will. So gift is safest way of doing any transaction. When it comes to power of attorney, so power of attorney, in earlier days people used to transfer the property through agreement to sale of power of attorney, but then Supreme Court has made it very clear that you can't transfer the property through power of attorney. There has to be registered sale deed. So power, just give a power to your agent to do all necessary act and deeds to transfer the property in someone else's behalf, but you can't acquire title through power of attorney in your favor. So that is clear. Power of attorneys cannot be the instrument to get title to particular property. It is a means where somebody is authorizing agent to transfer his or her property in favor of someone else. After that, registration of sale deed is must to get clear title to the property. So power of attorney is just authority to give someone to act on his behalf. It doesn't give title to the property.
Do you think that these days frauds related to property have increased, or do you think that it is on a decrease? What do you see the trend being?
Because of digitalization, I mean, there's a plus, there's a minus. You get a lot of benefit, but then obviously chances of fraud has
Yeah.
increased. As I mentioned that, so now everything, land records are available online. If
Yeah.
you see government site, everything is there. So since chances of fraudulent transaction has increased, it's always advisable to make sure that you do proper due diligence, consult proper property lawyer, see the site of RERA, see the site of government revenue records, and before entering into any transaction, just verify the title of the buyer, because there are encumbrances, there are mortgages in favor of banks, certain mortgages they don't register also, so you don't get to know. So to avoid all this, it's always better to check on title.
Right. And when it comes to, NRIs who, a lot of NRIs have properties back home, what if there are disputes that they have on those properties? How do they manage that? I mean, will they always have to come here to, if there goes into litigation, will they always have to attend and come to India and solve those disputes? How does that work?
So NRI can always sign a power of attorney and give that power to someone else who they can trust, and litigation can be pursued by their agent or a power of attorney holder. So, but when it comes to giving evidence, when trial goes on, it's a trial or evidence can be given by that particular person if he or she wants to give that evidence in court. But nowadays there is a VC system.
Yeah,
You know, because of digitalization, there are scope has increased that they don't need to come every time for each and everything. So it can be through space, but I would suggest or advise that power should be specific to particular uh, case only. Like
correct.
if I'm giving it to fight my case for which is for litigation which is pending in high court, then it should restrict to that case or a
Yeah.
matter only.
Hmm.
One should not give general power of attorney where handle bank accounts also, do my sale transaction also, and do my litigation also. So if it is litigation, in then mention that particular litigation suit number or a court name, high court, city civil court, district court, or a NCLT. So power of attorney should be specific. That will help in avoiding litigation. Otherwise there will be complexity because of that power of attorney.
Right. And then to end our podcast today, I would like to ask you, what is, the advice that you would give um, property owners or, new time buyers in India?
So again, same thing. Please do due diligence. So these are. I would say when you go and buy onion or a potato, na, you have that mentality, our Indian mentality. If it's 5 rupees, we say please give it in four
Yeah,
rupees. But when it comes to property, market is such that people are blindly buying the property, and there is then n number of litigation because of that. So and they don't want to incur cost of lawyer, thinking that it's like property will be ours, we will be in possession of the property, that there won't be any chance of litigation or blah blah blah, whatever they are thinking at that
yeah,
particular point of. But because they are not, they don't want to incur that cost of lawyer or want to do due diligence, they will end up in litigation which will go on for years and years. So I would
correct.
suggest, advise to a buyer that please consult lawyer before you're buying any property, because it's nowadays property is worth crores.
Yeah,
So
correct.
it's, you
And
are investing huge amount, and so please consult proper lawyer who can do proper due diligence on your behalf. You are buying property from, because common man doesn't know. If you are buying property from particular company, then you have to see ROC records
correct.
also. If you're buying from individual, then you have to say that individual has that title to the property or not, whether he or she has inherited property or she or he has acquired property through his own means,
Yeah,
whether he has mortgaged that particular property to some with some other bank where there is no registered document, or you may not get to know whether the property has a charge or mortgage on that particular property. So it's always I would advise, please take legal consultation
yeah.
before you buy the property.
Yeah.
And
I think
do
it would
property.
be much easier on people's pocket to consult a lawyer before they buy a property than then having some dispute later on and then hiring a lawyer to solve and, fight that case. So, yeah, and I think with that, we can wrap today's episode. We have explored intricacies of property rights from ownership and inheritance to dispute resolution and modern challenges. And the key takeaway, I think, today would be that understanding your property rights is not just about the law, but it's about protecting your assets and making informed decisions so that you can avoid unnecessary disputes. A big thank you to you, Advocate Deepika, for sharing your insights, and thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure our listeners really will benefit from this information. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast today.
It was pleasure being a part of this discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you so much to our listeners. Please tune in for our episodes and don't forget to subscribe to Legally Speaking with Rest the Case. Thank you once again. Thank you.